Welcome to our deep dive into the world of Steve Jobs and Apple.
Yeah, always a fascinating topic.
We've got excerpts from Walter Isaacson's biography, Steve Jobs.
It's really the definitive look at his life and leadership and, yeah, the impact he had on tech.
So much more than just iPhones and Macs, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, what were some of the less obvious things that shaped him and Apple?
Well, you have to go back to his childhood.
Okay, back to little Steve.
Yeah, his home growing up, it was designed by Joseph Eichler.
No way.
Yeah, Eichler. Those homes are famous for their clean lines and simple taste.
So he, literally grew up inside good design.
You could say that, yeah.
Makes you wonder if that planted the seed for Apple's design obsession, right?
I think so. Jobs himself talked about how much Eichler's work influenced him.
Huh, interesting.
There's in the first Mac, the iPod, that whole substance over flash thing.
That all connected.
Yeah.
So even his house was a teacher.
Right. And speaking of teachers, his dad almost became a real estate agent.
Oh, yeah, the biography mentioned that.
Took classes, got his license, the whole 9 yards. Wasn't cut out for it. Apparently not. Jobs actually admired that about his dad.
Huh. That he wasn't a good salesman.
Yeah, it showed that substance mattered more than just charm.
So even his dad's failures were teaching him something.
Right. You never know what's going to shape you.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Now let's jump ahead a bit to the 70s.
Okay. The era of hippies and hackers.
Jobs and Wozniak, they're selling those blue boxes, right?
Yeah, making free phone calls, little rebels.
Already disrupting things.
In a way, but the real revolution was about to begin. The Altair.
The what?
The Altair, the first personal computer kit.
Okay.
Just parts you had to solder together yourself.
Whoa, I could barely set up a Wi-Fi router.
It was a different time, but the Altair, it sparked something huge.
Huh.
Bill Gates and Paul Allen, even they got in on it, wrote BASIC for the Altair.
So this was like the Wild West of computing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where Apple I comes in. Wozniak designs it. Jobs sees the potential.
Classic Jobs.
Always the visionary. They needed money, though.
To build it.
To manufacture it, to sell it.
So what'd they do?
They sold a calculator, and get this, Jobs sold his Volkswagen bus.
He sold his van to start Apple? That's commitment?
Total belief in their vision and a reminder that sometimes, taking a leap of faith with a friend can change the world.
It's a good lesson. Okay, we got to talk about this reality distortion field thing.
Yes.
It comes up a lot in the book.
Jobs had this uncanny ability to convince people of almost anything.
Like a superpower.
Yeah, he'd set impossible deadlines, make these outlandish claims.
And people believed him.
They did. He had this charisma, this force of will.
What was it, all smoke and mirrors, or was there something more to it?
It was a combination, I think, charisma, willpower, but also a genuine belief that he could bend reality to his will, and sometimes it worked,
Give me an example.
The original Mac team, they shipped on this insane deadline.
That they thought was impossible.
Yeah, exactly, but it wasn't always a good thing.
What do you mean?
Well, remember the bet Jobs made with John Couch?
Wow.
Another Apple engineer, he bet him $5,000 that the Mac would ship before the Lisa.
Okay.
It fueled this rivalry that actually hurt both projects.
So the reality distortion field could backfire.
Yeah, it could create chaos as much as success.
Wow, so this field drove these incredible results, but also created chaos.
Yeah, fascinating.
Totally. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something I think is a little less chaotic.
Okay.
Design, the book, makes it clear that Jobs was obsessed with design.
Oh yeah, not just how things looked, but how they worked the whole experience.
He was famous for saying design is how it works.
Exactly. He agonized over details most people wouldn't even notice.
Like, give me an example.
Well, there's this story about an early icon for the Mac.
Okay.
It was a cute little rabbit for speeding up the mouse.
Sounds harmless.
Jobs rejected it, said it looked too gay.
Can you imagine getting design feedback like that?
Talk about a specific vision.
Wow, so his attention to detail, even if it was unconventional.
It was key to Apple's success.
While other companies were focused on specs,
Apple made tech feel human intuitive.
you didn't just use their products, you experienced them.
That's the key.
And speaking of things that felt very human, Jobs was really good at saying no.
He was ruthless when he had to be.
Shutting down projects, killing product lines.
Refusing to compromise his vision.
Seems harsh, but
It was crucial.
yeah,
When Jobs came back to Apple in '97,
the company was a mess.
he simplified everything down to just 4 product lines.
Whoa.
Bold move, but it saved the company.
He even got Apple out of the printer business.
Called up the head of HP, said, you guys handle this.
Just like that.
That was Jobs.
Powerful lesson, right?
Yeah, saying no is just as important as saying yes.
Especially when you're trying to build something truly great.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, now we got to talk about music.
Can't talk about Jobs without talking about the iPod.
It wasn't just a gadget, it was a statement.
It was the embodiment of his vision for Apple as the digital hub.
He saw the computer as the center of our digital lives.
And he wanted Apple to control the whole experience, hardware, software content.
The whole shebang.
Exactly.
So the iPod was just the beginning.
It was a piece of the puzzle.
And of course, he obsessed over every detail of the iPod.
Absolutely. The click wheel, the interface, everything.
Had to be perfect.
He even made sure you could get to any song in 3 clicks or less.
3 clicks or less. Talk about specific.
That was Steve.
And then came the iTunes Store.
Another game changer.
Jobs convinced the music industry to embrace digital downloads.
Created this seamless ecosystem.
Changed how we listen to music forever.
For better or worse.
Yeah.
He had that effect on things.
He did. And speaking of big personalities.
We can't forget about Bill Gates.
The rivalry. The clash of the titans.
Jobs and Gates, 2 brilliant minds. 2 very different philosophies.
Jobs saw Gates as unimaginative.
Focused on business over artistry.
And Gates saw Jobs as a showman.
More style than substance.
There's this great story in the book.
Oh, yeah.
Jobs went to Microsoft to pitch them on writing software for the Mac.
Okay.
And he described this amazing factory churning out Macs.
I remember this.
The Microsoft team, they nicknamed it Sand.
Wow.
Steve's amazing new device.
Classic.
But you know, behind all the barbs, their rivalry pushed both companies to innovate.
Absolutely. A classic example of how competition can drive progress.
A love-hate relationship that benefited us all.
In the end.
But let's be honest, Jobs wasn't always the easiest guy to work with.
He had a reputation.
Demanding, perfectionistic, could be brutal.
It's all true.
But that intensity, that drive, it's part of what made him so successful.
Right. There's always 2 sides to the coin.
It's almost Shakespearean, right?
Like a tragic hero, flawed but brilliant.
Leaving behind this incredible legacy.
Jobs showed us the power of design, the importance of focus, the courage to be different.
But he also reminds us
What?
that even geniuses are human.
With all our complexities and contradictions.
Exactly. Now, before we go too far, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
This idea of Apple as the digital hub. What exactly did Jobs mean by that?
It was more than just selling gadgets.
It was about
creating an ecosystem, a world where Apple products were at the center of your digital life.
the computer was the hub.
Everything else revolved around it.
So it was about creating this connected experience.
Exactly like with the iPod and iTunes.
Okay.
It wasn't just a music player and a store. It was a complete system, hardware, software content.
All working together.
Seamlessly. And that same philosophy would extend to the iPhone, the App Store, everything.
He wanted to create a world where Apple products were the bridge to all of it.
The information, the entertainment, the connection.
And he did it.
To a remarkable degree, even today, Apple's ecosystem is one of its greatest strengths.
It's mind-blowing to think how much of our digital lives are shaped by that vision.
Jobs' fingerprints are everywhere.
They really are, but the journey to creating that digital hub, it wasn't always smooth sailing.
Right, there were some bumps in the road.
I mean, the guy got forced out of his own company.
It's true, in '85, after a power struggle with the CEO.
The CEO he hired.
John Scully. Yeah, Jobs was ousted from Apple.
That had to be devastating.
That was a major blow, but, Jobs, he didn't just disappear.
So what did he do?
He founded a new company called NextT.
NextT?
Yeah, focused on building these high-end workstations, universities, businesses. They were beautiful machines.
Weren't they those weird black cube computers?
The very same, technologically amazing, but they never really took off.
So a bit of a flop.
Commercially.
Yeah.
But NextT, it would prove to be crucial later on.
Really? How?
The technology they developed there, especially the operating system, it would become the foundation for Apple's comeback in the late 90s.
So even in exile, Jobs was laying the groundwork for his return.
It's incredible, right?
It really is. It speaks to his resilience, his determination.
And his unwavering belief in his own vision.
Even when he was down, he was never out.
Yeah.
What a story. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From Jobs' childhood home to the birth of Apple.
The reality distortion feels.
His design obsession, his ouster from Apple. The founding of NextT.
It's a lot.
Where do we even go from here?
Well, next we'll dive into Jobs' triumphant return to Apple, his battle with cancer.
And ultimately,
We'll try to unravel what his legacy truly means.
for the world and for all of us.
It's a big question.
This deep dive is already blowing my mind.
It's gonna get even wilder.
I can't wait.
Buckle up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm officially hooked on this deep dive.
Yep.
We just left off with Jobs getting ousted from Apple starting NXT and basically planting the seeds for his eventual comeback. It's almost like a movie script. What happens next?
Well, hold on to your hat, because the next chapter is wild. While Jobs was busy with NXT, he also acquired a small animation studio from George Lucas. You might have heard of it, Pixar.
Pixar. Wait, so the guy who brought us the Mac also brought us Toy Story? That's mind-blowing.
It's one of those things that seems so obvious in hindsight, but at the time it was a risky move. No one knew if computer animated films would be successful. But Jobs had faith in the technology and the creative team at Pixar.
And that faith paid off big time. Toy Story wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
It revolutionized the animation industry and made Pixar a household name.
Exactly. And it also showed another side of Jobs' genius.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a tech visionary, he was also a storyteller, a master of entertainment. He understood the power of connecting with people on an emotional level.
This is where it gets really interesting. So Apple is struggling without Jobs. NXT isn't exactly setting the world on fire, but Pixar is making movie magic. Then what? How does Jobs get back to Apple?
Well, in a twist worthy of a Hollywood ending, Apple ended up buying NXT in 1997. The deal brought Jobs back to the company he co-founded this time as CEO.
So the prodigal son returns. Was it a happy reunion?
Not quite. Apple was on the brink of bankruptcy. Many people thought the company was doomed. But Jobs had a plan.
Okay, what was the plan? Spill the beans.
First, he dramatically simplified Apple's product line. Remember that mess of different models they had before he left? Jobs cut it down to just 4 core products. It was a bold move that showed his laser focus.
He also brought in a new design aesthetic. Remember those colorful iMacs? They were a radical departure from the beige boxes of the past.
Exactly. Jobs understood that design wasn't just about making things look pretty, it was about creating products that were intuitive, user-friendly, and even joyful to use.
Those iMacs were a breath of fresh air. They made computers cool again.
And they were a huge commercial success. They signaled to the world that Apple was back bolder and more innovative than ever.
So Jobs saves Apple from the brink, brings in a new design language, and then what? How does he take Apple from surviving to thriving?
This is where the digital hub strategy we talked about earlier comes into play. Jobs wanted Apple to be more than just a computer company. He wanted to create an ecosystem of products and services that would connect people to the digital world in a seamless and intuitive way.
Okay, but how did he do that?
He started with the iPod. Remember, this was 2001, MP3 players were becoming popular, but they were clunky and hard to use. The iPod changed all that. It was sleek, intuitive, and most importantly, it could hold 1,000 songs in your pocket.
The iPod was a game changer. It wasn't just a gadget, it was a fashion statement, a cultural icon. Suddenly, everyone wanted one.
And then Jobs did something even more brilliant. He launched the iTunes Store. This wasn't just a place to buy music. It was a digital ecosystem that seamlessly connected the iPod to a vast library of music.
He basically created the first legal and user-friendly way to download music online. It was a revolution.
It was, and it completely changed the music industry. The iPod and iTunes made Apple a dominant player in consumer electronics. But Jobs wasn't done yet. He had one more trick up his sleeve. The iPhone.
The iPhone. I remember when that came out. It was like something out of science fiction.
Right?
A phone, a music player, an internet device, all in one sleek little package. It blew everyone's mind.
Exactly. The iPhone wasn't just a phone. It was a mini computer that fit in your hand. It had a revolutionary multi-touch interface that made it intuitive and fun to use.
Remember the first time you swiped your finger across that screen? It was magical.
It was, and that's exactly what Jobs wanted. He wanted to create products that were both powerful and delightful products that would change the world. And with the iPhone, he succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams.
Wow, what a run. The iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, all launched within a decade. It's hard to imagine any other company achieving that level of innovation in such a short time.
It's a testament to Jobs' vision, his drive, and his ability to assemble and inspire incredibly talented teams.
But let's be honest, he wasn't always the easiest guy to work with. The biography paints him as a demanding perfectionist, sometimes even tyrannical.
That's putting it mildly. He was known for his blunt feedback, his temper tantrums, and his relentless pursuit of perfection. He pushed people hard, sometimes too hard, but he also inspired them to achieve things they never thought possible.
It sounds like he had a dark side, a shadow self. Was it just his personality, or was there something deeper going on?
Well, you have to remember, Jobs was adopted. He always felt like an outsider, someone who had to prove himself. And he was intensely driven, almost manic, in his pursuit of success.
So his personal history, his psychological makeup, all of that fed into his leadership style. It's fascinating how these things intertwine.
It is. And you can't talk about Jobs without talking about his obsession with design. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth exploring further.
Absolutely. He famously said, "Design is not just what it looks like and feels like, design is how it works." But what did he mean by that?
Well, for Jobs, design wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about creating products that were intuitive, user-friendly, and even joyful to use. He believed that every detail mattered, from a curve of a button to the weight of a device.
I remember reading about how he insisted that the original Macintosh have only one mouse button, even though most computers at the time had 2 or 3.
That was classic Jobs.
Yeah.
He believed in simplicity, elegance, and stripping away unnecessary complexity. He wanted Apple products to be as easy to use as possible, even if it meant breaking with convention.
He also insisted that the iMac be available in a range of bright colors, even though most computers at the time were beige or gray. It was a bold move that paid off big time.
Exactly. Jobs understood that design was about more than just functionality. It was about emotion, about creating products that people would connect with on a visceral level.
And he was a master at it. Apple products, from the iPod to the iPhone, are as much about style as they are about substance.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that design philosophy has become one of Apple's defining characteristics. It's one of the reasons why Apple products are so popular and so enduring.
Jobs' attention to detail was legendary. The biography recounts stories of him obsessing over the design of Apple stores, the packaging of products, even the font used in marketing materials.
It's true. He believed that every touch point with the customer mattered. He wanted to create a holistic brand experience that was consistent and memorable. He was a true pioneer in this regard.
His design philosophy wasn't just about making beautiful products. It was about creating a seamless and intuitive user experience that extended across all of Apple's products and services.
Exactly. He wanted to create a world where Apple products worked together seamlessly, where everything was connected and easy to use, and he largely succeeded.
Okay, we've covered Jobs' vision for design, his digital hub strategy, his demanding leadership style. But we can't forget about his long-standing rivalry with Bill Gates.
Ah, yes. The tech world's version of the Lakers and the Celtics. Jobs and Gates were both brilliant visionaries who helped to shape the personal computer revolution. But they were also fierce rivals with very different personalities and approaches to business.
Jobs saw Gates as a pragmatist, someone who was more interested in business than in art. Gates saw Jobs as a showman, someone who was more style than substance.
Their rivalry was legendary. It played out in the press, at conferences, and in the products they created.
The biography mentions an incident where Jobs, in a fit of rage, accused Gates of stealing Apple's ideas. Gates calmly replied that they both had this rich neighbor named Xerox, and I broke into his house to steal the TV set, only to find that you had already stolen it.
Classic. But despite their differences, Jobs and Gates also had a grudging respect for each other. They recognized that they were both pushing the boundaries of what was possible with technology.
And their rivalry ultimately benefited consumers. It drove innovation and led to the creation of some of the most iconic products of all time.
Exactly. Competition, even if it's fierce, can be a powerful force for progress.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored Jobs' childhood, his early days at Apple, his exile and founding of NXT, his triumphant return to Apple, his design philosophy, his digital hub strategy, his rivalry with Bill Gates. It's almost overwhelming.
It is a lot to take, and Jobs' life was a roller coaster of successes and failures, of triumphs and tragedies. But through it all, he remained a fascinating and complex figure.
He was a visionary, a showman, a demanding boss, a flawed human being, but there's no doubt that he changed the world.
He did, and his story continues to inspire and intrigue us even years after his passing.
Now, I know we have to talk about his later years, his battle with cancer, and his legacy. But honestly, I need a mental break. There's a lot to process. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose of information.
I understand. We've covered an incredible amount of ground today, tracing the arc of Jobs' journey, from his early fascination with electronics to his transformation of entire industries. When we return, we'll explore the final chapter of his life, his battle with pancreatic cancer, and delve into what his legacy ultimately means for the tech world and beyond.
I can't wait. All right, so Jobs is back at Apple. He's launched the iPod. The iPhone things are going great.
You'd think so?
But there's a but.
Yeah, there's always a but with Jobs.
What is it?
In 2003, he's diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, wow, pancreatic cancer, right?
Rare form of it.
That's awful. But knowing Jobs, I bet he didn't go down without a fight.
You're right, he initially resisted surgery, tried alternative treatments.
She later regretted.
Yeah, but throughout his illness, he never stopped working, never lost his passion for Apple.
So even while battling cancer, he's still leading Apple, still innovating.
Absolutely. In fact, some say his most creative years came during this time.
Really?
He oversaw the development of the iPad, for one thing.
Another game changer. Right?
It revolutionized the tablet market, solidified Apple's dominance in consumer tech.
I remember thinking, do we really need a tablet?
We didn't know we needed one.
Jobs did.
He had this way of seeing what we wanted before we even knew it ourselves.
He did. And the iPad, it was another example of his genius for simplifying tech.
Making it intuitive, accessible to everyone.
A bigger screen than a phone, more portable than a laptop.
Perfect for browsing, reading, playing games.
And of course, it was a huge success.
Another feather in his cap, another confirmation of his vision.
But the illness, it took its toll, right?
It did. In 2009, he took a medical leave of absence.
How long was he gone?
6 months, came back with a liver transplant.
Wow.
He continued to lead Apple, but his health was declining.
It's hard to read about this part of his life.
Yeah,
you know?
it is.
Knowing what he was going through, but still pushing himself to create, to innovate.
Incredible willpower, incredible determination.
But even Jobs couldn't escape reality forever.
No, in August of 2011, she resigned as CEO.
Handed the reins over to Tim Cook.
Right, and just 2 months later,
On October 5th, 2011.
Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56.
The world lost a visionary that day.
It did, but his legacy, it lives on.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
let's talk about that legacy. What are the key takeaways from Jobs' life and work?
Well, on a practical level, he showed us the power of design thinking, the importance of the user experience, the value of a strong brand.
Okay, but beyond that,
Beyond that, I think his story offers some more profound lessons.
like what?
First, follow your passion, even if it takes you down unconventional paths.
Jobs dropped out of college, traveled to India, studied calligraphy.
All those experiences shaped him, influenced his work.
He was never afraid to be different.
Never afraid to challenge the status quo.
And that's another lesson, right?
Yeah, don't be afraid to take risks, to fail to learn from your mistakes.
Jobs had his share of failures.
He did, but he never let them define him.
He always got back up, kept moving forward.
Resilience was key for him.
It really was. And one more thing.
Yeah.
Jobs' story reminds us that technology, it's ultimately about people,
Absolutely.
connecting us to information, to entertainment, to each other.
And the best tech, the tech that truly matters, it's the tech that's human-centered, intuitive, even joyful to use.
It's a powerful legacy.
One that continues to inspire.
So to bring it back to that question you asked earlier,
About what Jobs would think of tech today.
yeah, would he be excited by all the advancements?
Or would he be pushing for something even more radical?
Something we haven't even imagined yet.
Knowing Jobs, I think he'd be doing both.
Celebrating the progress.
But also challenging us to push further, to think bigger.
To imagine a future that's even more human-centered, more connected.
More meaningful?
Wow, what a thought.
It is. Steve Jobs may be gone, but his legacy lives on.
Inspiring us to think different, to dream bigger.
To create a future worthy of his vision.
Well, that was quite the deep dive.
We covered a lot of ground.
I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of Steve Jobs, Apple, and their impact on the world.
It's an incredible story, and it's not over yet.
Even as technology evolves, as new innovators emerge.
The lessons we've learned from Jobs, they remain timeless.
Thanks for guiding me through this. It's been an eye-opening experience.
My pleasure. And remember the most important lesson of all?
What's that?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.